Hey Sopranos fans, welcome to another Machiavellian Monday here on Sopranos Street, and since we have already evaluated Johnny Sack in this series, I think we should take a look at the other main player in the fight to control the Lupertazzi family after Carmine Sr.'s death, Little Carmine. Now, when looking at Little Carmine, just like with Patsy Parisi, we will do so through two lenses. The first one, we'll take a look at Little Carmine at face value.
Little Carmine. It's common knowledge the guy's retarded.
And the other through the lens of the popular fan theory that he was actually a genius who was able to fake stupidity and maneuver his way to the top. Personally, I think there's one huge problem with that theory, and I'll address that later, but even if it's true and he was a master puppeteer, that doesn't necessarily mean that he was Machiavellian. I am reminded that Ralph Machiavelli, in his book The Something, strategy is far more specific than just who is the best schemer. It's essentially a how-to-rule manual for current or aspiring leaders, detailing the most effective ways to deal with specific situations and different types of people based on Machiavelli's historical observations. It also contains several sections and quotes that make it somewhat ironic and humorous that it's held in such a high regard in the mafia life. At the end of some of the Machiavellian Monday episodes, I'll go over one, so stay tuned to the end of this one where I'll be going over the first. Anyways, an important thing to remember when evaluating Little Carmine, even at face value, is that he wasn't entirely stupid. Machiavelli describes three types of intellects. The first, which is the best, is one which comprehends by itself. The second one is one which comprehends what others have comprehended, and the third, which cannot comprehend on its own or by showing of others. This third type is best demonstrated through characters such as Matthew Bevilacqua and Sean Gismonti, whose inability to grasp even basic concepts like not being able to walk up and talk to the boss whenever and wherever provide a perfect example. Little Carmine, on the other hand, clearly shows the ability to grasp things and even has a certain level of awareness, especially when it comes to other people's character.
I have no way of knowing what kind of advice he's getting from Johnny.
Johnny's always usually a voice of moderation. Me and him, we get along good. So with due respect, let's not jump in and blame Johnny.
True, John's a pragmatist, but he's also a greedy motherfucker.
However, he doesn't demonstrate any aptitude for innovation, so he would have fallen into the second type of intelligence. And another important thing to keep in mind when evaluating him at face value in terms of Machiavellianism is that he didn't show any real desire for true leadership until after his father's death, and the strategies in The Prince are meant for those who wish to lead. So with that in mind, the only portion that needs to be evaluated in context would be from Carmine Sr.'s funeral to Little Carmine's officially backing out of the fight. Now, at Carmine Sr.'s funeral, we see the beginnings of Little Carmine's desire to run the family. If he had had it prior, he wouldn't have spent so many years in Florida fixing wet t-shirt contests. Personally, I don't think he ever really wanted it. He preferred the simpler life. I think his entire move was motivated by some mixture of a feeling of obligation to maintain a family legacy, jealousy towards the attention Johnny Sack was receiving, and was possibly pushed over the edge by the Opus Dei debacle. This is why he gave up so quickly and retreated back to the more peaceful life. If this is the case, it is ironic that the fight started over Opus Dei, but we'll come back around to that when we get to Carmine ceding the family to Johnny. Whatever his motives were, Little Carmine's pursuit of the top spot was not very Machiavellian at all. The closest thing you could say that were that Machiavellian strategy dictates that you need to be viewed more as clement or mild, but Little Carmine takes it too far and seems more weak than mild. And the strategy also dictates that you move to the area and reside there in person, which he did. But did he really have a choice? This seems like more a matter of practical necessity than devious strategy, but nevertheless, it does qualify as Machiavellianism, so I had to mention it. Anyways, after that, he careens off the path of Machiavellian strategy, according to which, when inheriting a territory where your claim is hereditary, you need only to not rock the boat and to deal with potential problems quickly. Now, Little Carmine clearly is on board with not rocking the boat. Unfortunately for him, Johnny Sack clearly isn't bothered by rocking boats and moves swiftly to secure his position at the top. Little Carmine failed to address this threat promptly and was behind the eight ball from the start. He was timid, and Machiavelli expresses that, with few exceptions, it is better to be bold than cautious, because good fortune is like a woman, a lover of men with the audacity to command her.
Move, woman.
And, at the end of the day, Johnny Sack was bold and Little Carmine was cautious. This set the stage for Little Carmine's inevitable loss to Johnny Sack, and he becomes an example of what Machiavelli asserts about people who rise based on name rather than ability. They have an easier time acquiring, but a harder time maintaining. He also provides an example of Machiavelli's sentiment that whenever the long-standing princes and families of Italy have lost their territory, it was due to sloth, not misfortune.
I'm telling you, Carmine, we go all out, we'll steamroll right over John. And I predict the guys in the street in Brooklyn, Queens, they'll welcome us as fucking heroes. It'll be easy. All due respect, Carmine. That's why you need to get out there. Put your ear to the street. Let the guys see you take the reins.
That's not how I want to handle it.
But here's the thing. Even if he had come out on top somehow, he still wouldn't have been in a good position to rule according to Machiavellian strategy. According to that, he should have started off violent and then eased up, because it is easier than starting off lenient and then trying to increase the violence. He then further explains that when people expect harshness but are treated leniently, it wins tremendous favor. On the flip side, if people are expecting leniency and then encounter harsh treatment, even if it's justified, it builds animosity. Either way, it's irrelevant because Carmine backed out of the fight and appears to have happily retreated back to the simpler life by the end of the series, and that is what would make it funny if the whole fight kicked off over Opus Dei. Now, before doing this episode, I had no idea what it was, so I went to their website to see what they were all about. They say they are a group within the Catholic Church with no beliefs outside of the Catholic Church, but with a focus on the sanctity of the ordinary life. Now, I'm sure what little Carmine considered the ordinary life differs greatly from Opus Dei, but I think the parallel is here to some degree. Now, when evaluating him through the lens that he is actually a master puppeteer, the entirety of his involvement in the Sopranos series comes into play, and so we'll start with the period of time before his father's death. Assuming he had some master plan in the back of his mind, he learned two things from his meeting with Tony to discuss the escalating tensions with his father.
I don't want to crack nuts, but I will.
I feel the anger.
When I try, for the second time, on a separate issue entirely, to reach an accommodation. And he don't even make a counteroffer. Where's his respect?
I have no way of knowing what kind of advice he's getting from Johnny.
Johnny's always usually a voice of moderation. Me and him, we get along good. So with due respect, let's not jump in and blame Johnny.
First, he learned that the tensions between New York and New Jersey were escalating, and second, and more importantly, he learned that Tony and Johnny Sack were forming a close relationship based on Tony's quick defense of Johnny. Now, Machiavellian strategy dictates that you become the protector of your weaker neighbor and let no enemy as strong as you gain a footing there, or else they may turn them against you, and little Carmine's actions during the golf game would fall somewhat in line with that principle. In this case, he was not the protector of his weaker neighbor, New Jersey. He actually caused them harm, but he won't get any of the blame from that because that was his father's doing. What he did do, however, by calling out Johnny Sack on his relationship with Tony while also increasing tensions, is make it more difficult for Johnny to be openly pro-New Jersey and gain favor there. While it may not have played out exactly how he had hoped, this move could be viewed as an attempt to keep potential foes separated. After his father's death, it's easy to view his actions as cautious rather than bold and therefore un-Machiavellian, but consistent with someone of second-level intelligence, he understood something that his father understood, which is that the mafia life is all about the money.
You're being unreasonable, John.
Ralph Cifarella's the only one who knows how to handle the Esplanade? Put Pat DeCorvo in there.
There are millions of dollars at stake.
Again with the money?
Yeah, again with the money. It's settled, John. So either name a price or get the fuck over it.
His actions may have been an attempt to keep the family as profitable as possible, a sentiment that Machiavelli expressed when saying that if too much force is required to keep a territory, it becomes more of an expense than a benefit and everyone involved becomes hostile. And when it comes to those kind of guys and their money, hostilities would rise quickly. Then, when Angelo was killed, Carmine would have known he lost his only true ally. Now, although it's in a different context, the sentiment Machiavelli expressed regarding the trustworthiness of people would still apply. If they fought because they were courageous, they can be trusted. If they fought because they were ambitious, their motives can never be trusted. Angelo was not the ambitious one, Rusty was. And even Johnny Sack could see it.
Our friend there, the mayor of Munchkinland, John wants him gone.
Jesus, Rusty?
John's worried he might find another puppet like little Carmine, try to run the family through him.
So after the deaths of Angelo and others, Carmine realized it was too much of an expense and appeared to back out. But as Machiavelli stated, war is not to be avoided, only postponed for benefit. Now, the only real clue we get, and even this is a stretch, that Carmine is still interested in the job is during his lunch with Tony.
I hear you, Tony, and I'm flattered. But, boss, I don't think so. Especially now that Doc has cemented his position.
If he were truly happy being removed, what difference would it make that Doc cemented his position? Either way, he was out for the time being, so he worked on building support while avoiding the fallout that Machiavelli said would have to occur before he could take the reins. Machiavelli states that when conquering a free state, which the Lupertazzi would have been at that point, it must first be ruined, which between the infighting and the conflict with New Jersey, it was. All the while, he was working on connecting old influencers to himself, like when bringing backers in for Chris's movie Cleaver, and acting as a broker of meetings between different people, just waiting for the right time to step back in. If and when he did, according to Machiavelli, he would have been in a much more secure position than before, because a prince who takes a territory for the second time has a harder time losing it, especially if all previous threats have been eliminated. So most of his actions would have fallen right in line with Machiavellian strategy, and if that were the case, then he would have been a level 1 intellect, which, according to Machiavelli, would have been very aware of how what they say appeared. This would fall right in line with the theory that he faked stupidity in order to get people to underestimate him.
The fundamental question is, will I be as effective as a boss like my dad was? And I will be. Even more so, but until I am, it's going to be hard to verify that I think I'll be more effective.
But that brings me to the big problem that I see with this entire theory. If that was an act, it would have had to have gone on for decades, because those guys didn't just meet him. They've known him for years, and in the case of the New York guys, especially the older ones, they've probably known him since he was a little kid. He would have had to have been diabolical since diapers and maintained his farce through adulthood. So ultimately, I think we should just take him at face value. And now, as promised, I will go over one of the statements that make the Mafia's reverence towards Machiavelli rather ironic. In Chapter 8, concerning those who have obtained a principality by wickedness, he uses the ancient Sicilian Agathocles as an example of someone who is incredibly shrewd and possessed many of the qualities that should be prized in a leader. Nevertheless, his barbarous cruelty and inhumanity with infinite wickedness do not permit him to be celebrated amongst the most excellent men. So it's funny that he is held in such high respects by the same people he says can never be considered great men. Well, thanks again for watching this episode on Sopranos Street. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next score.